People often ask whether Eastern or Western belief systems are more correct. That question sounds reasonable, but it's based on a misunderstanding. The East and the West were never trying to answer the same question in the first place. Western metaphysics asked, who governs the universe? Eastern metaphysics asked, how does the universe stay in balance? That difference shaped everything: religion, morality, power, leadership, even how societies respond to failure. East versus West, two ways humanity learned to understand reality. Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Chen. I teach metaphysics and belief systems, which essentially means I try to answer the questions. Why we're here, how the universe works, and what we're supposed to do when life doesn't behave the way we expect. When people talk about Eastern and Western belief systems, the conversation usually turns into a comparison about which one is more advanced, more rational, or more modern. But that comparison misses something fundamental. The East and the West weren't actually trying to solve the same problem to begin with. The West, a world built on control. If you look at Western metaphysical traditions going all the way back to ancient Greece, you see thinkers like Plato and Aristotle asking questions about truth, form, and causality. Later, Roman thinkers built legal and moral systems around responsibility and authority, and Christianity framed existence around a single external source of judgment. In that worldview, time is linear. There's a beginning, a moral test, and an end. You act, you are evaluated, and consequences are ultimately delivered by something outside yourself. This way of thinking shaped Western societies in profound ways. It gave us laws, contracts, institutions, scientific inquiry, and an obsession with clarity. You're taught to ask, who is right? Who is responsible? What is the correct answer? And in stable environments, this approach works extraordinarily well. It produces speed, innovation, and structure. It allows societies to build quickly and scale aggressively. But if you look east, the starting point is very different. The East, a world governed by patterns. In classical Chinese thought, especially in Tao Te Ching attributed to Laozi, the universe isn't governed by a commanding authority. It's governed by patterns. Things rise and fall, expand and contract, move out of balance, and then correct themselves. Confucian thought, associated with Confucius, focused less on divine judgment and more on harmony between people, families, and states. In Indian traditions, Hinduism and Buddhism introduced ideas like karma and rebirth, not as moral punishment, but as continuity. Action leads to consequence, often beyond what a single lifetime can contain. So, while the West asked, who is in control? The East asked, how does balance return? This distinction matters because it changes how societies respond to uncertainty. Western systems are built on prediction and control. Eastern systems assume impermanence from the start. One tries to master chaos, the other tries to move with it. Why the West dominated the last 2 centuries? For a long time, especially during the last 2 centuries, it looked like the Western approach had won. Industrialization, military power, colonial expansion, and scientific dominance made Western systems appear unquestionably superior. And for a while, in a relatively predictable world, they were incredibly effective. But here's the important correction. The East was never stagnant because its belief systems failed. Much of Asia was interrupted by colonialism, war, forced modernization, and imported structures that didn't align with existing cultural frameworks. The metaphysics didn't disappear, they went dormant. And now something interesting is happening. Why the 21st century favors Eastern thinking. The world today is no longer linear or predictable. We're dealing with climate instability, artificial intelligence, global supply chain shocks, financial volatility, and geopolitical realignments that don't follow clean cause and effect logic. Control is temporary, forecasts expire quickly. Systems behave in ways no single authority can fully manage. In other words, the world is starting to behave the way Eastern metaphysics always assumed it would. This is why the idea of an Asian century makes sense beyond economics. It's not just about GDP or population size, it's about worldview. Eastern societies were trained philosophically to expect cycles, disruption, and renewal. They're comfortable with ambiguity. They don't require certainty to function. Western systems, by contrast, are struggling with the loss of predictability. When outcomes can't be controlled, anxiety rises, institutions strain. People demand answers that don't exist yet. What the world actually needs now And this brings us to the real question, not which system is better, but which one prepares us for the world we're actually living in. The answer, I think, isn't East or West, it's integration. Western thinking is still essential. We need structure, accountability, science, and decisive action. But Eastern thinking provides something just as important: adaptability, patience, and an understanding that not all problems are meant to be conquered. Some are meant to be endured, absorbed, and adjusted to. The most effective people today, leaders, entrepreneurs, thinkers, are already doing this, often without realizing it. They operate inside Western systems, but they think in Eastern patterns. They act decisively when conditions are clear, and they adapt gracefully when conditions collapse. So, when people ask me which belief system we should lean on in the modern world, my answer is simple. Lean on the one that helps you function when control disappears, because certainty is no longer guaranteed. Balance is. And that brings me to the key takeaway from here. The West taught us how to build systems, institutions, technologies, and momentum. It taught us how to move forward with confidence, how to act decisively, and how to turn ideas into structures that scale. The East, on the other hand, taught us how to live inside those structures, how to adapt when they strain, how to endure when they fail, and how to remain balanced when certainty disappears. And the century ahead won't belong to those who choose one way of thinking over the other. It will belong to those who can build without becoming rigid, who can adapt without becoming passive, and who understand that progress and resilience are not opposites, but partners. In a world that is faster, more complex, and less predictable than ever before, the real advantage won't be certainty. It will be the ability to move forward while staying adaptable.